Left-wingers of Reddit, what is your most right-wing opinion? Right-wingers, what is your most left-wing opinion? Right-wing. I'm not against gay marriage. I don't really see it as any of my business. I support the decriminalization of all drugs and that usage and addiction should be treated as public health issues and not a crime, and the release of inmates with non-violent possession convictions. No one should be in jail for possession, and no one should go to jail for possession. I am also generally uncomfortable with private prisons and would like to see prison as more rehabilitative than whatever we'd like to pretend they are now. I think products from China should be regulated. Like, the Chinese government needs to care about regulations. Because currently, a company from China could sell a knockoff motorcycle helmet for cheap and claim it meets safety regulations without any issue. A consumer could then buy the cheapest motorcycle helmet on Amazon or whatever and get hurt. What happens then? That's just an example from the hip though. Left-winger, I think we have started to expect an unreasonable level of moral purity from people, and our attempts to make everything PC is akin to the war on drugs in that it does far more hurt than good. Nuance has also been lost, and many on the left have resorted to black and white thinking. Calling people out or canceling them doesn't help anyone, and I can't think of anything more dreary than a fully sanitized world. My most left-wing opinion has to do with prison conditions. I oppose private prisons and support better conditions for prisoners. Prison should be a punishment, but prisoners don't lose their human dignity, no matter what they did. They deserve a minimum standard of treatment, and from a pragmatic standpoint, it makes things both safer for the guards and other prisoners. If having TV keeps them from killing each other, I'm all for it. I especially despise the seeming tolerance of prison rape by some, and how some people even approve of it and act as if it is part of the punishment of being in prison. I'm very conservative. My left-wing opinion is destruction of rainforests. Once a primeval, old, forest is cut down, it never regrows the same. What eventually replaces it is secondary forest and grass, which is totally different from the original forest. I am totally against deforestation in almost all cases, unless it's land that was specifically designated to be grown and then cut down by responsible logging companies. Also, I utterly despise trophy hunting. Deer and quail are one thing because they live everywhere and are plentiful. Rhinos, lions, elephants, etc. are not, and I don't care how much money someone has to pay for a license to do it because I still hate it. I know the counter-argument is that big game hunters have to pay massive fees to conservation groups to get the license, but it's a sickening thing to do. I don't really like any type of hunting, but I can tolerate birds, deer if done legally. I cannot tolerate big game hunting. Left-winger here. I don't understand the fuss over cultural appropriation at all. As a youth, I heard a lot about how America is a melting pot, essentially, blending cultures of immigrants. I understand that as a white male, I do not experience the systemic racism that minorities do. But I can't help but feel that cultural appropriation comes across as being oversensitive. I don't know if this makes me an asshole, but I just don't see a problem with someone resonating with a particular culture. That said, I'm open to comments from fellow left-wingers who disagree with me because I admit I don't know everything, and I'm certainly willing to hear your voices. As a left-winger, I think political correctness is total BS. Why is it okay to cancel a white person on Twitter for having said the N-word 5 years ago, but if a religious minority actively promotes hate, that's suddenly okay because they're marginalized themselves? Minority or not, everyone should be held to the same standards, and those standards should always be subject to open discussion. Cancel culture is not a solution. I'm a conservative. Most people on my side of the aisle act like they want small government and less control of their rights, so I've never understood why they are so against police reform measures. Yes, we obviously need police to an extent, but why the hell do they need so much power? If they weren't out there with the ability to engage with any person by force over any small perceived violation of some city ordinance, then many situations that turn bad wouldn't come to pass. For example, if my tags are expired, this is an administrative issue that could be dealt with in an office, but now a dude with a gun is standing outside my window actively looking for a reason to arrest me for something else. Even if I have no other issues during that stop, it was still escalated by being detained by an armed dude present. Traffic police could be a thing, they stop you, Ticket you for the violation noted, don't look for traffic unrelated violations, aren't armed, send you on your way. Real armed cops can be sent to known or potentially dangerous situations as a result of a call or a warrant. I'm pretty far left. I think nuclear power is fine. I honestly don't understand why so many liberals are against it. Chernobyl was 100% human error. Next worst incident? Fukushima, which has 1 death attributed to it and 16 injuries. Edit. A lot of people seem to be pointing out that left-leaning people don't have a problem with nuclear power. Maybe it's a generational geographical thing? My 36, Midwest, US, left-leaning friends give me shit all the time for my support of nuclear power. Meanwhile, my right-leaning family always jokes that my support of nuclear power is the first step in becoming Republican. After the paradigm-shifting Trump years, I'm not entirely sure which wing I belong to, but I was firmly right-wing in the before times, so we'll go with that. My most left-wing opinions first: the war on drugs was a complete and absolute failure that put mostly minority, non-violent criminals behind bars for crimes that mostly white people with the money for better lawyers got off scot-free for. Closely related, second of all, the absolute refusal of my fellow conservatives to even consider that slavery and historical racism just might play even a tiny role in the current social and economic disparities we see today drives me into rages that are completely NSFW. Left-winger here: I believe you can joke about anything as long as it's made in good fun, not made with the overt intent to cause pain to other people. You can joke about literally any subject, no matter how traumatic, evil, or disgusting it may be. Now, I'm not saying jokes should be a complete free-for-all, there can be a wrong place or time for one, but it's just not realistic or satisfying to say you can never joke about something. I think the main thing that this question and the answers that follow can prove is that most people are more in the center than they realize. But alas, identity politics takes control and people want to label themselves and fight against the other team. I wish we could all just realize how similar we are rather than focus on our differences. Right-winger and straight-ticket Republican voter until 2016. I think it is insane that Republicans espouse personal liberties but are so anti-LGBTQ+, i.e. people exercising their personal liberties. I happen to be bisexual and secular, so my opinion is biased, but isn't what consenting adults do in their own time with other consenting adults being regulated by the government also a matter of encroachment upon personal liberties? I'm also pro-choice because, again, personal liberties. The government shouldn't be involved when it comes to matters between a consenting patient and a medical professional. Regulating my body directly contradicts the notion that my personal liberties are inalienable when you have politicians who want to restrict my use of birth control that I pay for and dictate my sex life because why? They know better? How do Republicans not see this as a direct contradiction to their narrative that the government has no business depriving me of my personal liberties, and to top it all off, prostitution? Legalize it. Tax and regulate it like a legitimate profession, if you must, but I just don't see a person providing sexual services to another person as any different from the myriad of jobs I have done in which I was being paid directly for the services I was able to provide with my body. Agreeing to pay for sex and refusing to pay for it afterward is rape, as the SW wouldn't have given consent had they been aware that the other party was being dishonest with them, and nothing can change my mind about that. It should be a punishable offense. Also, I don't consider immigration to be a bad thing. America was supposed to be a melting pot. Our diversity is what gives us strength, and a lot of these immigrants aren't demanding that society change for them. I haven't met a single immigrant who hasn't tried to assimilate into our society and who believes that Americans should learn their language as opposed to the other way around. Republicans have lost sight of a lot of what makes this country great. I think that there should be a clear and easy legal pathway for undocumented immigrants to gain citizenship with no penalty in this country. Anyone willing to risk their fucking lives to be here deserves to be an American as much, if not more than, those of us who were born here. ETA disclaimer: this is, by no means, intended to be a complete manifesto of my political beliefs. This is purely an admittedly rough summation of the beliefs I have that would be considered left-wing. Center-right. There needs to be massive government investment in housing. An absolute glut that reduces prices as well as reduced property taxes for those with a local connection and increased taxes for those buying second homes. Like London businesspeople buying a holiday home in Cornwall, an enormous amount of social ills could be solved by reducing the amount people have to spend on keeping a roof over their head. I'm very left-wing socialist, but I believe that owning guns, US, should stay a right. I think gun control is important, but we have to make sure not to backpedal on our first 10 constitutional amendments because it sets a precedent and would make room for the government to take away other constitutional rights. I'm not usually a fan of slippery slope arguments, but I think the consequences of giving the government that much control could be really bad. Left-winger here. My most right-leaning opinion is my disagreement with the CAB. I'm certainly not pro-cop and agree that a lot of cops, far too many of them are bastards, and there need to be sweeping changes and more accountability, but law enforcement is necessary, and by calling all of them bastards we discourage any of the few people that are trying to help. I would prefer something more like FMCAFDBOOT, far too many cops are fucking bastards, don't be one of them, but understand that's way more of a mouthful and not a pronounceable acronym.